Hello, my name is Pete Saronis, and I am super excited today to host a conversation, our Data Center Insights program. Our guests will be Steve Nauman, Tony Vicinelli, Dave Martinez, and Ms. Karen Hutton. Steve is the Senior Manager and Data Practitioner for the United States General Services Administration. Tony Vicinelli is the Chief Technology Officer for the federal sector at Enlight Software. Dave Martinez, our guest from Engineering Program Project Lead, Infrastructure Computing Services Domain at the Sandia National Laboratory. Super psyched to have Dave here in his use case. And again, the lovely Karen Hutton, Vice President of Marketing at Enlight Software, will be joining and bringing an optic to this discussion, often overlooked in terms of how we message this technology and this technical jargon into something that is in layman's speak. We will focus on a number of topics today that range from the data center itself, the tools that power a data center, like data center information management. We'll introduce some new terms like the hybrid digital infrastructure management concept. We will address what is a lights out data center. That's the title of our show today, Lights Out Data Center, optimizing the energy sector and helping the planet. And we always try to inform and educate and enlighten. And our guests today are all gifted in various spaces, Steve in the federal government, but also how this data center optimization initiative is so important to our country. Tony, who represents a company that is, again, pushing the envelope, moving the needle to constantly stay abreast of change. And Dave, as the investment was made in one of our most treasured institutions, Sandia National Lab, major credit goes to you for really tapping into the capability of the tool that you purchased and really helping secure the laboratory's infrastructure. So with that, Steve, welcome. It's great to see you again.
Thanks, Pete. Great to be here.
You got it. I'm going to start with you and Steve. For a lot of us inside the Beltway and those beyond, this data center optimization initiative, something born out of this transformative government, invest in technology, but secure it. What is the state of DCOI and how's it looking with the transition and so forth in Washington, literally with a new president?
Well, we're still going strong. And one thing about data centers and IT in general, it tends to be bipartisan. So this is the third administration that an iteration of DCOI has been in existence, and we keep moving along. There was a recent report that came out from GAO that showed the amount of money that's being saved by data center consolidation, and that we still are making progress. We've been around for about 10 years now, and we still have a long way to go. There's a lot of opportunity left within the federal government to optimize and consolidate. And what we do, we try to make metrics that are really meaningful to the agencies, but allow them to focus on their mission and focus on their compute, whatever makes sense for them.
Thank you. And Steve, we're going to bring up a lights out data center. And I bet if I ask you and Tony and Dave and Karen, or even if I asked myself, we'd come up with similar descriptions, but it'll be great to get some perspective on that. Tony, hearing Steve speak to that, being inside the Beltway, but also you have a side of your company that is really addressing DCIM and that acronym. What can you tell us about in terms of how the government's embracing a lot of the DCIM implementation?
Yeah, I mean, the government's done a great job of mapping out for people how to optimize their data center for their current use, but then also look at how can we move towards cost savings with consolidation, with cloud optimization, moving to the cloud. DCOI has done a great job with that. And so as a decent vendor, we want to make sure we're embracing the spirit of that initiative and reflecting it back in the language that DCOI asked of us, right? To make sure that our customers can then use the information that's presented to them to answer those DCOI questions, to provide, that really provides a map that people can follow for what should I do with my compute? Should I keep it on-prem? Should I move it to the cloud? Am I progressing? Have I done better than last year? And so, sometimes whenever you have a platform, a data analytics platform that can, it's kind of like the dictionary, right? It has all the words in it, but you're not really putting a story together. So the DCOI helps us get that story, put it together, and help, hopefully helps people move forward.
No, great points. And I appreciate you addressing DCIM informing cloud implementations, which is a
Yes.
very, as Steve knows very well, we'll get into some of that as in addition to, folks, this discussion on data centers really embodies a lot of cloud discussion. Application rationalization is another concept we'll address, but great points there, Tony. Thanks for teeing that up. Dave Martinez, we would love to get your thoughts just from the standpoint of data center infrastructure, something that the laboratory depends on, but more importantly, investments in capabilities to maximize the data center as a piece of that critical infrastructure. We'd love to get some of your thoughts, but first you'll have to click the unmute button.
No, I got to. I was waiting until you finished.
Okay.
Yeah, just leading in after what Tony had to say. Basically, we had a vision here at Sandia, understanding moving toward lights out and modernization. We had to understand what we have here, and by not knowing everything that we have, we invested in the DCIM tool. So basically, that gave us a great baseline and great metrics to watch over the last few years, tying our infrastructure into coupling actually our infrastructure into the IT world. So basically, they're kind of co-joined now, where before is one or the other. You either worked infrastructure or you worked IT. So now we have so closely coupled together, they're like interdependent of each other. So once we were able to map that out and see where we're at, now we know where we're going to go. So we have a plan, and that leads us into our lights out and data modernization.
Wonderful. And I'm going to stick with you, Dave, because the concept lights out data center, you can Google it, and it could be as simple as just reading a few that I found today, which are a lights out data center can indeed have few, if any, lights on. It's climate controlled, it's enclosed with minimal access to it. Okay, yeah. Pretty simple. What are some benefits, though, or can you give us a description of what Dave Martinez views as the opportunity with the lights out data center?
Oh, there's plenty of opportunity. It'll enable us to do some good IT innovations as we move forward with this. We could scalability, flexibility, and performance and plan for the future. There's also reduce our downtime, from human element, the outages that we incur. I mean, naturally, somebody's going to absolutely unplug something or absolutely turn something off at the end of the data center. You keep that element out. From a safety and security standpoint, it makes it almost foolproof at that point, because basically the physical aspect and of the safety and security is removed. There's tons of opportunities. And also, if you think about it, all the people that go to work and go to this data center, not only do you save the energy within the data center itself, but you also reduce the overall carbon footprint of people traveling to and from the data center, residing on or near the data center, entering in and out of the data center. So it gets that footprint out of here. And so basically, and it gives you a chance to move forward with what your concept is of automating everything. You can move toward machine learning, AI. You can incorporate all different types of solutions into your data center that you aren't able to if you have the human interface, and the culture has to shift and change. And this way they get out of the mode of the Fred Flintstone thinking and move to the George Jetson way of thinking.
Ooh, I like that. That's a good one. Tony, let's move to, Dave mentioned a few concepts, how to inform via the data center actionable intelligence. You and I talk quite often about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the power of analytics. Why don't you talk a little bit, just as a refresher, that the roots of Nlight have always been in data and analysis, and where is AI playing a role now in your strategic framework at Nlight?
Yeah, I mean, so the data center is a sensor-rich environment, right? It's constantly, it has all of the sensing available, and it's constantly wanting to tell you things about itself, right? It's too hot, this is how much power I'm using, it's too humid. All of those things are the perfect place to gather that information, to be able to see trends and patterns that human beings can't see, right? The machine learning allows us to pour that information into a platform that can look and find those patterns and say, is this interesting to you, Mr. Human Being? Can you use this information? And so we're seeing that in our predictive analysis for whether something is, from the usage of the data center over time, right? We can start to see CPU utilization, we can see temperatures, we can see power surges. All of those things can help in that predictive analysis. Say it's about to be too hot in this part of the data center. Maybe you want to move that workload somewhere else. You're about to, have a temperature spike, which will put your, a particular maybe breaker in jeopardy or at risk. Those types of things. Also, anomalous activity that you would see. So if maybe you see an alert that's formed that shows up in the data center, and you can say, "Oh, let me go investigate that." You can actually go back through the data and see if that is normal behavior that happened that is throwing the alert, so expected behavior, or it's anomalous, right? Things like batteries that are charging or unable to charge. You start to see, I should say, battery kind of degradation, right? So in a UPS, it's not charging to its fullest potential. Those are things that you would like to start to see happen, like before they happen, right? You can save yourself a lot of time, heartache, and money if you know those things are happening. You can prepare, be proactive. So those are some real world applications that, frankly, we come to our customers with some use cases, but they come back to us with maybe more real world use cases, right? Sometimes we say, "Oh, this would be cool." We go out, take it out into the field, and our customers come back with the real world stuff that we can point that machine learning weapon at.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Karen, what are your thoughts, coming from hearing these stories and opportunities to address data centers? What are your thoughts at this point in the discussion?
Well, I was intrigued by what, Dave, you were talking about in terms of the IT innovations, and you saying at the onset that you brought DCIM on to help with your objectives, and then Tony briefly talked about the how, that the data centers are sensor rich in providing that kind of data. So I just wondered if we could circle back to Dave and say, Dave, as far as these IT innovations, how has DCIM addressed some of the specifics? You mentioned scalability, flexibility, reduced downtime, saving energy. All of these are getting to, it sounds like trying to get to the goal of a lights out data center where there's less human error, less need for human interaction. So how has that gone for you, Dave, in that real world scenario of achieving some of these innovations or objectives you've had?
Yeah, I could speak. And Tony touched a little, quite a bit on it actually as well. But basically, so once you get a good baseline of what you have and how you're operating within your data center, you start to understand temperature ranges. You could almost, instead of a reactive mode, we become almost proactive. So basically, we know when we're running job X or we're doing our upgrades at this particular time. What we've done is we're trying to put everything together. So actually, if we could queue jobs at a certain time where we hit the optimum curve of everything, the efficiency of a power, less network traffic, the optimum curve of cooling. So we hit everything at once. So in the end result, we're saving energy, but we're doing just as much work. And so we leverage everything that we've deployed in the DCIM tool, not only from that perspective to understand how to model and get these jobs going and move forward. We also are able to have it utilize this system for life cost analysis, along with analytics and along with all different types of aspects within the interface of finding ghost machines. So basically you have 12 machines running, and maybe only 10% of the time 3 racks are running, but yet they're still sitting on your floor running, just humming along, not really doing any work. So but we've been able to eliminate these machines, virtualize them, and remove hundreds of systems off the floor by just interfacing with the DCIM tool and our IT world.
Good stuff, Dave. Steve, why don't you jump in here? I know you're chomping at the bit.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been talking about for quite a few years now with DCIM is the convergent monitoring, and that's what we're really talking about here. We're using facilities metrics to help manage the IT load. Now, in the federal government, we have a lot of cyclical workloads. Think about end of fiscal year or tax season, or a new Congress comes in, a new administration. Things are based on those cycles, and we can use HDIM and its AI and predictive analysis to move workloads around if they're getting too hot. It can also help us with, there's been a big push to get out of our own data centers and into cloud providers. So we need to reach into there also. That's where HDIM comes in, hybrid digital infrastructure management. So not only can we base things on temperature in our own data centers, but we can base them on load thresholds. We may get to a certain point and our servers may not be able to handle it. HDIM and DCIM will be able to help us predict this, and then we can move those workloads to the cloud or another data center, wherever it may be. And bringing all that together will start pointing out all the efficiencies and inefficiencies in our IT portfolio.
So Steve, I'm going to stick with you here for a minute, and just if you can provide that refresher or just emphasize the importance of, and folks, you can use the application rationalization playbook as the resource, but when you think about making investment in new technology, Steve, how important, especially now with cloud, and you brought up the hybrid digital infrastructure management concept, is application rationalization to be taken in terms of doing your technology due diligence as we look to migrate to the cloud?
Well, as some of you know, I wrote the application rationalization playbook for the federal government, and it was based on my work at a previous agency in doing major migrations, data center migrations. We gave the technicians a choice of one of 3 places. So we asked them to get their as is or current state and then a to be state, and then tell us which one is the best. Apply that now anywhere. Every agency is already doing application rationalization, whether they know it or not. If you have something in production, you had to come up with the business need, the requirements, you had to develop it, ask for the money, install it, support it, train users. And at some point in the future, you have to look at it and say, is it still viable? Is it still doing the job? Let's see if it works better in the cloud or another data center. And that's a process that everyone is doing. We're just trying to help them pull all that information together. And DCIM and HDIM and TBM, all those things bring aspects to application rationalization, and you can make better decisions based on cost, service delivery, and business resiliency. And that's really what it comes down to. And when I say cost, it's tracking cost. It's not necessarily saving cost. You could be going for higher business resiliency or better service delivery, which may increase your cost, but at least you'll have all those data points where you can now show management when they say, how come our costs are going up or how come they're going down? Where are those costs going? And we can show that now. And that overall, what people don't, or up to this point, haven't even considered was the energy aspect and the facilities aspect, all those things that go along with operating the data center, which is the basis for everything, no matter where it is, if it's in the cloud or edge, it's in a data center. So we're trying to bring all that information out so people understand how they all really work together.
That's great, Steve. Thank you. And again, not forgetting that, folks, lights out data center, just to remind you, isn't anything brand new. It's been discussed. And while there are definitely benefits that folks like to speak to about, you still need some human beings, I'm sure, walking around and checking things, but physical damage, a cable being pulled or accidentally, those are the things that cut communications off. So lights out, yes, can be a wonderful idea from a sustainable and carbon footprint and all that good stuff. But again, you still need the tools to monitor that. And Steve, you nailed it with that application rationalization and TBM resource suggestion that can help agencies avoid costs and save money in the process. Tony, can we go to your CTO brain, or can we tap into it?
Let's try. Yeah.
Yeah. You got a lot of neurons in there, brother, firing all the time. I love it. You hear this, and the government looking to modernize and transform, and you talked a bit about Enlight being born, and then it's an analytics tool, and it can give you a lot of data, but you still have to be able to do something with it. Human intuition comes into play there. Can you speak a little bit about, even if it's just your personal visioning, Enlight's in a constant state of maturation and evolution. What are you envisioning for the platform based on what the government needs today, but what you think the world's going to be dependent upon with regard to information and data?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what we found was that, DCIM really did not encompass everything that we did, right? That the information that we were gathering, and even sort of data analytics platform was broad, right? There's a lot of folks that do that. And we started to look at, well, what do we really do? It's really critical information platform, that we started to think of as the critical infrastructure that we're monitoring, how it affects the kind of full thread that goes between the foundational resources, the infrastructure that provides resources for IT services, right? Being able to connect that full thread was kind of our first realization that it is these two silos of information that are, kind of connecting this full story together. From that, then you can start to see all of these other applications that spill out from it. So I mentioned, the machine learning, for the potential outages, but then also the new application of the data that we already have into augmented reality form factor, right? So imagine, we'll take the lights out data center example, where you have a certain skill set that's on site. It may be, network folks. But if you were able to actually superimpose or take the Enlight data and have someone follow a set of tasks that may not be their expertise, right? Now you've extended the remoteness, or extended, I guess, the knowledge base that you have kind of on the bench to this person, enabling them, with a whole new skill set. So in our implementation of that, you would actually have, you would actually see the task that you were performing. It would direct you and walk you down through the data center. It's information that you already have reapplied to extend someone's skill set. And I see more and more of that, especially with COVID sort of kind of ramping this up, right? Forcing us down this path where no one will want to be disconnected anymore from their data center. Fine print of a lot of colos were like, acts of God. You won't be able to have access to your stuff. And pandemic falls under acts of God, that people weren't able to get to their servers, weren't able to have connectivity. And I don't think that that's going to be the case anymore. So however we can reapply that information into these other form factors, I see it going that direction, right? And so hopefully we're going to be there waiting for.
Yeah, I like the introduction of workforce development. I'm going to ask Steve and Dave first to talk to that. We as human beings always like cool tech and the next thing and the new phone, the new printer, if people still use those. And I think of the third tier of what the government tends to always emphasize when they talk about IT modernization and data accountability. It's, oh yeah, and a 21st century workforce, that too. I mean, isn't that, Dave, what DCIM and your investment in Enlight is helping the Sandia culture with, in terms of maybe giving the human being more time to leverage the brain cell and intuition while the operations are done 24/7? How is workforce development in your environment? Then Steve, will come to you the GSA. Dave?
Oh yeah, that's right on. I mean, I'm so excited about this new augmented reality. I mean, I envision, because I run the hardware team as well out here. And so basically when we go to lights out, it's just going to be my team there. So, I mean, now a lot of things they don't do yet. So like adding ILO, iDRAC, and then go on port activation, et cetera. They could be walked through all these steps that they actually don't do right now, or basically the hardware going from point A to point B, installing the cables, labeling and everything, then they pass it on. But now it enables them or encompasses them to be able to do a one-stop shop, and we could truly be what I envisioned when I was given the hardware team. I came from infrastructure world, given a hardware team. So now I could really get closer and encompass that whole team together. And it's something I've always wanted to do, because basically I'm thinking this, if you know the infrastructure and you know the IT part, I mean, you know the hardware part, and now you're learning a little bit of the software part, and it's not necessary that you know it all, but if this enables a person to understand that. And what it's also doing is we're looking at starting a program, which would be an IT apprenticeship program, basically. So we'll start somebody just fresh off the street, bring them in here, and we're gonna start them for learning infrastructure, hardware, some software. So this is a perfect match for building the team that we want in the future.
I love it. IT apprenticeship. You know, that's amazing. That's great stuff there, Dave. Steve, talk a little bit about this workforce development, being the federal representative here. That's a big deal in government, right? Workforce development.
Right. And you know, Pete, being a former Fed, that we have budget cuts all the time, and we have other duties as assigned. So with this whole HDIM and DCIM growth, it's going to allow people to be able to be trained in other areas. Everything to do with a data center or IT, nothing is static. If you find yourself not taking courses, you're going to be left behind. So this gives you the opportunity to expand what you know, because you have this information and you're basically being taught by AI or the software itself where the issues are, and correlate to that what you see in real time. Every organization, every portfolio, every production environment has problem children, applications that are going down or giving you a hard time, network situations. And AI and DCIM and HDIM will allow you to speak intelligently about where the problems are and attack those problems. You've heard me say this before. I never go for low-hanging fruit. I go for what do you need to fix, and HDIM and DCIM will allow you to do that, and people will be able to be trained on this, and we can be more horizontal. Most people in IT are very focused in their one area. To make yourself more marketable and more valuable for your organization, you need to be more horizontal.
Absolutely. Karen, thoughts?
Well, as you guys were all talking about these various issues, challenges, and solutions, it struck me that you're all part of the U.S. federal agency market domain. But Tony, as you and I both know, our DCIM solution, or DCIM solution of any kind, is widely used beyond U.S. federal agencies and into enterprises. So based on the things that we've been talking about, it sounds like these challenges and addressing these and this IT modernization and everything about lights out is certainly a place where enterprises are as well. Would you each agree with that?
I can say I've seen that everywhere, right? I've seen the ability to for us to so they may not call it DCOI, right? In a commercial space, but the spirit is the same, right? They still have this hybrid compute fabric that they need to understand, right? They need to translate across. And so that is, they may not have a mandate, so to speak, like DCOI sets forth, but they have the same challenges and they have the same need for information to measure how are they doing? I like that, what you said, Steve, about, it's not always about saving money. It's about cost tracking. And to say that, well, I did more with the same amount of money. That's an improvement. We got these things done with the same amount of money. And I think that that's an important wrinkle to point out, because, sometimes moving to the cloud will, that's not always the cheapest way to do it, but there might be that elasticity that you mentioned before, these cycles that come out. We have to have that elasticity. So the cost was worth it. There's sometimes I need to keep it on-prem because of, risk or, a policy, right? So DCOI and HDM and those things help you answer and justify all those questions.
Yeah, I asked because we may have some enterprise people listening in, and so I just wanted to dovetail into, how much this is similarly being addressed on their side, in those environments.
Yeah, Steve or Dave, do you have any comments to Karen's question?
Yeah, I do. In the end, it's all about transforming data into solutions, right? So we're all doing that, from the enterprise side, the HPC side, to whoever has a computing system or working on a computing system. And basically, I would think the enterprise would be more apt to do this than the federal government, because they're in the business to make money. They're in the business to stay in business and to transform data quickly and efficiently. And I would think that they would, at some point, they're going to start leading the charge. They're going to see what we're doing and how we enable services and how effective this can be. I'm hoping this can be a learning experience throughout the world, actually, so people can share this knowledge and understand, hey, this legacy data center at Sandia is moving toward this. Well, I mean, we can do that. We should be on this as well. So I'm hoping that information goes out to everyone.
Steve, you get access to a lot of I know you want to comment. I just remember you have an ear to the pavement across the entire federal government. Use cases like Dave's. What do you have to say about just the sharing of that information and opportunity?
Oh, yeah. Well, we in my group call ourselves the brokers of information through our community of practice and all the federal agencies, not just the 24 CFO Act agencies, but all the smalls, the judicial and the legislative branches. And that's key to everyone learning at the same rate. The other thing I want to point out is I love learning from industry. I want industry to make the mistakes, and then we can capitalize on that and not make those same mistakes and save money in the process. We always get dinged in the federal government for not being innovative, but to me, being innovative means we try 10 things and one thing works. Oh, it's innovative. But when you do it in the federal government, you just wasted money on 9 projects. So yeah, that's why I'd like to see this expand in industry so we can learn from them.
Well said. Tony, you had a comment. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about, Dave's particular environment, the HPC, high performance compute environment. He's got some very unique, that's a unique place, right? It's funny. We like Steve mentioned, cloud is a perspective, right? So, that HPC environment is, he has to stay up. Dave has to have plenty of availability and uptime because he's got people renting that time from that HPC system. And I had not thought of that as a challenge, an additional challenge of his uptime and availability that he has to deal with. Just wanted to make that comment. That's all.
Well, I'm gonna. No. Well said. And I appreciate Karen kicking that off, because again, it's coming back to, and I hope our audience understands that this is, when we do our next episode, we'll be talking about something that maybe builds off this concept of lights out. And again, I don't want to drift. That was the title of our discussion, but a lights out data center is, again, maybe something that was done once, but now we have all these tools and energy is expended, and the less energy in that room, let the machines do what they're supposed to do. We will be continuing to address lights out. I want to go to Steve for a minute, because Steve, we do refer to a lot of legislation, regulation, mandates, NIST standards, this, that, and the other. you've been incredibly helpful to me personally, kind of distilling down the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. And I'm going to say that while it's I'm not mistaken, like a 2,000-page read, something that caught my attention for this discussion, and those listening today, this is a synopsis, and then Steve comment. One of the goals, objectives within this act specifically addresses that folks with expertise in energy efficiency and in the development, operation, and functionality of data centers, IT equipment, and software, including data center operators and facility managers, please collaborate with and address input from our national laboratories. Okay, that's paraphrased. Some of it's right from Steve. That's a strong message saying we need to work with, and Dave Martinez is an example of that, where they are early adopters and we can learn from them.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of our national labs and FEMP, and I think they go underappreciated. When I listen to hearings and I see people saying we need to hire the experts, and we have a lot of the expertise within the federal government, and this legislation will help enable that. So there's a lot of things that are put in. It was HR 133 signed late December, and that's the Consolidated Appropriations Act. And it brought back into play energy efficiency for data centers and buildings in general. But the DCEP program, Data Center Energy Practitioner, that's back on the table. There's going to be some tracking of PUE and things like that. So some of the things that we took out of our policy have been put back in and I think in the agencies that are the best fit to monitor that. So we still have a lot of the data center consolidation and efficiency part, but the folks who have that expertise, the national labs and FEMP offers training throughout the whole federal sector. And that's a great opportunity for folks that may be in acquisitions or the IT folks that don't necessarily know what's actually happening in the data center. I always say there's a disconnect between operations, the agency's real business, the CIO shop, and system support, and the data center. Everybody thinks they're talking the same language, but when you get this opportunity to cross-educate yourself, that's really key for the federal government going forward.
And I'm going to tee up Tony here, because in that same excerpt that I distilled, it says, and it calls on stakeholders from industry to have a mission to promote energy efficiency for data centers and information technology. So I'm going to just say, unbiased, shout out to Enlight. Obviously, the Sandia community is doing great work with that framework, and that's innovation in action. So Tony, any comment on some of this legislation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nice to have it spelled out, right, in black and white, as far as I think a lot of people are already kind of down that path, but sometimes they go into, purchasing or investing in a DCIM product with a very narrow view in mind, right? They think it's for a particular point solution. I need to understand where my servers are. I need to make sure that I am mapping all of my cable connections and where I'm monitoring for power, right? It's really all of those things, right? It's all of those things together working in concert to be able to deliver the right set of information for you to be effective, right? So there's a comprehensiveness to making sure that you are able to monitor in real time, alert in real time, gather real time information, and then map that to the resources that you're consuming and the relationships between all of those assets, right? That's what the raw data kind of stitches together, but then the analytics that come out of the other side help you then tell a story with that data. So being able to see that realized in black and white in that legislation is great.
That's wonderful. And Karen, do you have a comment before we move to parting shot?
No, I think Tony's kind of summed it up, and I'd love to hear everybody's final comment.
Love it. Love it. No, we really appreciate you just not only being a part of it, Karen, but just your perspective, being such an incredible messenger and turning some of this geek speak into what matters. And we're just very, very, very honored to have you with us today. Okay, so what we're going to do is migrate folks into our parting shots, where each speaker, I always like to say, they get a minute. They either run on for 3 minutes like myself, or maybe they do it in 10 seconds, and then the next person better be ready to go. But it's to leave you with something from today, individually and collectively here on our show, that you want to leave with the audience, but also something to tee us up for the next conversation. So Steve, we're going to start with you. Your parting shot, pal.
I'd like to leave everyone with a thought of how important data centers are in our civilization. Think of what's happened over the past year with the pandemic. Think about the big freeze down in Texas, and think about everybody that's relying on IT. IT, whether you call it cloud or edge, everything runs in a data center. Data centers are at the core of everything that we have in our economy, and they're part of our critical national infrastructure. And we better get a lot better at managing and consolidating and optimizing those data centers, not only for performance, but for location as well.
Well said. And Steve, critical infrastructure emphasis, spot on, my friend. Thank you for that, and your comments on resilience. Dave Martinez, you have the floor, my friend.
Right on. Okay. Well, I just like to tell everyone out there that if you have a data center or you're thinking about getting to the data center world, I mean, understand what you're getting into. I mean, and the ones that have a data center, look at a DCIM tool. I mean, don't knock it. And it's not just for point collection. There's a lot of things you could do with it. And also, don't be satisfied with just what you have. Don't stay status quo in your data center. Always look to the next day, next year. What am I going to do next year? Improve efficiencies, etc.
Dave, you are a move the needle kind of guy. We need more Dave Martinez's in government. Thank you, as always, for your time, and we will absolutely look forward to hearing the progress of you and your implementations. Tony Vicinelli.
Yeah, I mean, I really look forward to these because I always learn something from our government folks. They're always teaching. I'm always learning something from things that they're bringing forward, and I think that the government's done a great job of listing out, providing a map, providing information about how to make our data centers more efficient, how to think about maybe applying some of the the investments that people have made in their data centers. So I just look forward to further conversations with people that want more information about how they can leverage the data that they already have. As I mentioned, the data center is begging to tell you all this stuff that it knows about itself. And so you want to be able to collect that information as best as possible and get some value from it. So that's what my job is. I'm here to bring those new products, those new visions into Enlight, and I'm happy to do it. I'm always available for a conversation.
Yeah, Tony, keep those neurons firing, man. I always enjoy our conversations that aren't in webinar format. So you're a great mind. Ms. Karen, bring us home.
Yeah, so I just want to echo what Tony just said about being grateful to have input from Dave, Pete, Steve, all three of you. This kind of information hopefully is of value to our audience, but it certainly is to us at Enlight. It informs us on how we move the needle ourselves in providing solutions that help our customers look towards what Dave talked about in IT modernization, what Steve talked about, always focusing on measuring and the importance of a data center in every aspect of business and the economy. So I just want to thank you, Pete, for facilitating this. You are certainly excellent at bringing these thought leaders to the table, and we really appreciate it. And I invite the audience to continue to watch for more of these. We have a series of these going. And so, Pete, I look forward to working with you and Tony again, and hopefully Steve and Dave will rejoin us.
Well, thanks to all of you. You're brilliant minds individually and again and collectively. Data Center Insights, it's our program we love. We love to share. We learn, as Tony pointed out, from others. And whether it's lights out data centers, helping the planet. Obviously, the data center has become that heartbeat for our country and our world. And I hope you tune into our next episode. So thank you, Karen, for pulling it all together.